Remember those scorching hot metal slides, the swing sets anchored down with asphalt all around underneath? That was the playground of us Gen X kids. Growing up as a Gen X kid was definitely like living in a wild, untamed world. I mean, there weren't many safety regulations, especially in the playgrounds where we spent most of our free time. I mean, the playgrounds of our childhood were a far cry from the soft, cushioned, carefully designed spaces that children enjoy today. You could recognize a Gen X playground from a mile away. They were often made of hard materials like metal, concrete. And remember the towering metal slides would become so hot in the summer sun that they'd practically sizzle. And the swings. Oh, the swings. They were set on hard surfaces like asphalt, concrete. I mean, falling off of one of these from big heights onto one of these unforgiving surfaces was a rite of passage. I mean, scraped knees, scraped elbows, broken bones, sprained ankles was all part of the package. It was a time when play was synonymous with danger, and fun came with its share of risks. The magic of those playgrounds laid in their unpredictability. I mean, every visit was an adventure. The thrill of climbing to the top of a metal jungle gym, the exhilaration of swinging as high as possible, and the daredevilry of sliding down that scorching slide without actually getting burned. I mean, these were moments that defined our childhood. And yes, playgrounds in our time, they were definitely hazardous. And yes, they often led to injuries, but they also taught us to be fearless. They made us resilient. They trained us to get back up each time we fell. They taught us that pain was temporary, but the joy of conquest, overcoming our fears, was everlasting. Looking back, those playgrounds might seem like a symbol of negligence, a testament to a time when child safety was definitely not a priority. But for us, these were a symbol of our strength and our tenacity. They were our battlegrounds, our training grounds. These were our play fields. Injuries were common, but hey, they made us tough, didn't they? And car safety. I mean, safety for kids in the car. I mean, did you know that cars in the Gen X era often lacked rear seat belts? And child seats were not mandatory. I mean, when we think of car safety now, seat belts, child car seats, I mean, they come as no-brainer essentials. But when you take a trip back to our time, our era, you will find a starkly different picture. I mean, it's hard to imagine, but many cars back then didn't even have rear seat belts. Yeah, you heard me right. No seat belts in the back. And child safety seats, they were more of a rarity than a requirement. I mean, if they were used at all. I mean, they were often poorly designed, providing little more than a false sense of security. I mean, the idea of high-tech, crash-tested car seats, it was as alien as a smartphone or self-driving cars back then. The lack of basic safety features had serious consequences in the event of a car accident. In the event of a car accident, children were at a much greater risk of injury or even fatality. I mean, it wasn't just about the lack of physical restraints. I mean, without the safety regulations that we take for granted today, there was a greater risk of children being thrown around inside the vehicle or even ejected through the windshield during a collision. That's a chilling thought, isn't it? But that was the reality for many of us in our childhood. I mean, a simple trip to the grocery store or a drive to school could turn into a life-threatening event. I mean, the roads, they were like a minefield, and the lack of safety features in cars, it was a ticking time bomb. It can be a grim reminder of how far we've come in terms of child safety in vehicles. I mean, today we can't imagine letting our kids travel in a car without buckling them up securely in these well-designed, safety-tested car seats. But for us kids as Gen Xers, it was a different story. And yet, despite all these dangers, Gen X children, we survived, we thrived, we grew up to be resilient adults that we are today. It's a testament to our strength and our adaptability in a world that was often risky and unpredictable. And life was a risk, but it was a risk that we lived every day. Now, we also had many unseen dangers that you don't have around today. You know, our homes and our schools, they were painted beautifully, but there was a silent killer lurking in them, lead paint. I mean, we grew up surrounded by vibrant colors, but what we didn't know was that these colors were often the result of lead-based paints. Lead paint was a common feature in homes and schools until it was banned in the late 70s, but by then, for many of us, the damage had already been done. I mean, this silent killer could flake and become dust, which was then ingested or inhaled and could lead to lead poisoning. Now, this condition can cause developmental issues and severe health problems, especially in children, And the worst part, we were none the wiser, innocently living amongst all this toxic danger. But the threat didn't stop at lead paint. There was another silent killer in our midst, hiding in plain sight. Asbestos. Now, this material was raved and touted on for its heat resistance and insulating properties. It was commonly used in all building materials. It was present in our schools, our homes, and practically everywhere else. Asbestos could be found in insulation, tiles, even popcorn ceilings. If these materials were disturbed, microscopic asbestos filters could be released into the air, and inhaling these fibers could lead to long-term lung issues, including a particularly vile form of cancer known as mesothelioma. The lack of awareness and regulation of the materials at the time meant that many of us were exposed to these hazards unknowingly. We played, studied, and lived in these environments that were potentially harmful, oblivious to the dangers that were present. However, in spite of all these silent killers around us, we thrived, we played, we learned, we grew, and we survived. We overcame these hazards, which in turn shaped us into these resilient, hardy Generation Xers that you see today. We were exposed, yet we survived, making us stronger than ever. Our journey was marked by challenges, but each one made us stronger. And that, dear listeners, is the silent strength of Gen X. Now, I've talked and many people have talked about being latchkey kids, but there was more to it than just having a key to your house. Coming home to this empty house was a daily routine for us latchkey kids. Imagine being a child, finding your way back home from school, unlocking the door to a silent house and settling into an afternoon of complete solitude. Now, this was not a rare occurrence, but a common scene in the lives of us as children, where both parents were often at work and us children were left to fend for ourselves. Now, being a latchkey kid meant more than just having a key to the house. It was about shouldering responsibilities that were often beyond our years. We were the ones who had to manage our own snacks, tackle our homework without any help, and sometimes we even had to rustle up and make the dinners. We had to navigate the everyday challenges of life without constant presence of an adult. However, this independence did come with its own set of risks. Without an adult around, simple tasks could sometimes turn dangerous. A small kitchen accident, like a cut or a burn, it could escalate quickly without immediate attention. Emergencies like a sudden illness or an intruder trying to get into the house, and we were often without immediate help of any kind. And yet, despite these challenges, there was a sense of pride, of accomplishment in being able to take care of ourselves. It was not just about doing tasks. It was about making decisions, problem solving, and learning to trust our instincts. It was about growing up faster than most kids had to. And as myself, I look back on those years, I understand the risks that I was exposed to. And I appreciate the measures that we take today for the safety and the supervision of our children. But I also can't help but appreciate the skills and resilience that I developed during those unsupervised hours. Being a latchkey kid was not easy. It came with risks and challenges that children today might never face. But it also came with lessons of independence, self-reliance. And these shaped us into who I am today. It was tough, but it taught me to be independent. We had one other thing that people think is actually a danger now, and that was this freedom of outdoors without supervision. We roamed our neighborhoods, we ventured into woods and fields far from home and without adult supervision. This was our standard playtime. I want you to imagine a time where children were free to explore the world around them without the constant eyes of adults watching over them. A time when the great outdoors was a playground and our imaginations were our guides. This was the reality of us as Gen X kids. We enjoyed an unprecedented level of independence during our time outside when we went to play. This freedom allowed us as kids to explore, create, and learn in a way that is very different from the structured play of the later generations. We built forts in woods, played games in the street, climbed trees, and wandered to the farthest reaches of our neighborhoods. We learned to negotiate, solve problems, and face challenges head on. We developed the resilience and independence and a sense of adventure that has stayed with many of us to this day. But this freedom did also come with its own set of risks. Without adult supervision, children, we were more likely to get into accidents or fights or find ourselves in dangerous situations. We could wander too far, we could get lost, we'd encounter strangers that had ill intentions. We could injure ourselves while climbing a tree or playing a rough game of hockey, football, baseball, whatever. They all turned rough eventually, and when accidents happened, there wasn't always an adult nearby to provide immediate help. And then there were more hidden dangers. The fields, the woods that we explored. I mean, they possibly could have been polluted with hazardous substances like pesticides and industrial waste. People stored that stuff wherever they could dump it at the time. I mean, in the lakes and rivers that we swam in, they very well were contaminated. Even the air we breathed could have been tainted with pollutants given the less stringent environment regulations of the time. But despite these risks, many of us Xers look back on our free-roaming childhoods with nostalgia. We appreciate the lessons we learned, the resilience we developed, and the sense of independence that we gained. I mean, the freedom that we had during our playtime, it was definitely a double-edged sword, but it also played a significant role in shaping us into who we are as adults today. Now, I'd like to finish off by saying, yes, we faced dangers and risk, but we didn't let that define us. I mean, this was the mantra of us Gen X. A generation that we were definitely born in an area where the safety regulations were lax, environmental and health hazards were prevalent, and the children, we had less supervision, hugely less supervision than they did in the later generations. I mean, we all recall the towering playgrounds, scorching hot in the summer sun. I mean, these things were a testament to our bravery. We climbed, we fell, we got back up again. We knew the sting of scraped knees and the throb of broken bones, but we didn't let that stop us. We learned resilience. And then there were the car rides. We bounced around the back of the station wagon on family road trips, a practice that would give today's parents a frickin' heart attack. But from those trips, we learned to navigate, we learned to be observant, and to appreciate a journey. Our homes and schools, I mean, they were painted with lead, insulated with asbestos. We breathed in secondhand smoke in restaurants and in our living rooms. We faced health risks that children today can't even imagine. But from this, we learned the importance of health, of taking care of our bodies, of fighting for better regulations to protect future generations. We were latchkey kids, arriving home to empty houses because our parents were at work. We had to fend for ourselves, make our own snacks, do our homework without help. This was a heavy responsibility to put on young shoulders, but we rose to that challenge. We learned to be self-sufficient, to problem solve, to be independent. And then we had the freedom of the outdoor play. We explored our neighborhoods, adventured into the woods without adult supervision. We experienced the world in a way that few children do today. We learned to take risks, to trust our instincts, to appreciate the natural world. These experiences, these challenges, they shaped us. They made us strong, resilient, independent. I keep saying it, but it's so true. They made us who we are today. We are Generation X. We faced hazards. We overcame, and we stand strong.